Hello, and welcome to the Wise Woman's Journey. Today, my guest is Kamala Murphey. Kamala is a spiritual mentor and transformational healer. She works with baby boomer women who, despite outward trappings of success, feel lonely and empty inside. They know they're meant for more in life, and Kamala helps them to move from heartache to living a truly luscious life. Kamala has a master's degree in counseling and theology. She's an ordained minister and a Sufi master teacher. So, welcome, Kamala. I'm delighted to speak to you today.
I'm so excited to be here, Kathy. Thank you. And I love this topic of the wise woman's journey because it's, well, being of that age, it feels really significant. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, I definitely wanted you on the invite list because of your work, because you are working with women in this age group. The baby boomer women are this age group. And I think what you do addresses really important underlying issues for women.
Right.
And I certainly resonate with your bio that and see it in people that I work with
Mhm,
too. You know,
mhm.
there may have been many past successes, and yet somehow or other you find yourself in a new place in life with different values and desires.
Right. Right. It's almost as though you get to a certain point in life and there's something that opens up because we've done what was sort of expected. Most of the women that I've worked with have raised families, and then once the kids are gone, it's like, okay, so now what? And is I know that I'm meant for more. you know um, there just feels like there's something. Surely there's something more than just this. I loved being a mother. I loved raising my kids. I love being a wife. And yet there's that what now, you know. So
Yeah, so like an apprehension maybe of unexplored territory and
right.
not knowing quite how to enter it.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's mothers, my mother, I don't know about your mother, but the mothers that I knew did not talk about this. They sort of, once the kids are gone, they just sort of faded into the background. And so there wasn't a lot of talk about, well, we get into this new part of our lives by doing these types of things, or the exploration, and it just wasn't spoken about very much. So I think we really are in kind of new territory because we have more opportunities. And um, I think we're probably healthier at this age and just have, yeah, just more opportunities um, open to us.
Mm. I mean, there is I like the point you're making about the previous generation, because I always think, there actually was a huge, big difference between our generation and our mother's generation. And some of that was due to, the early days of the women's movement in like the 60s and the 70s.
Right.
Suddenly,
Right.
and it was equal opportunities legislation. So it was true. We did have a lot more opportunities than the previous generation, and were able to achieve things that they couldn't.
Right.
We might
Right.
arrive then in our 50s or older with a list of achievements behind us, which include working achievements as well as, raising our families,
Right.
um, and other achievements we might point to with regard to, relationships, community, etc.
Yes.
But
Because at the same time um, that the women's lib movement and these other opportunities, there was almost a need for women to be working and raising the family. So yes, they had the children and doing that, but they were also working women, and they had some successes, or many did, and could strive in that direction. But then, at 50 and 60 and older, it's like, well, yeah, that's great, but what what is this ache that I feel? That it's kind of a um, we touched on it earlier when we were speaking about it. Almost feels like it's a depression. It's not clinical, but it's like this something's not right. Something feels off. And really that idea of I feel like I was meant for more, but what is it? What am I to do now? So,
Mm.
even though they have, the kids are raised and they're doing well, and we've had successful careers and done well in business, but why isn't that enough, kind of thing?
Mm. Do you see this as being a spiritual calling for these women that you work with?
I do. Almost invariably, the women that I work with have had a spiritual background. They were raised in a church, but then sort of moved away from it as it no longer really fit. But there's always been a love for either the divine or some aspect of spirituality. So what I find is that it's like an inner calling, a calling from the divine, um, to come back to this, rediscover something, or discover for the first time, because being raised in the church, there's a lot of patriarchy. So where do women fit in there?
Mm.
Yeah.
And out of interest, was that your background as well? Were you raised
Yes.
sort of in a church? Because I know you've got a degree in theology, and you've obviously been
Right.
very interested in spirituality for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your
I
journey with
actually
that.
I actually had one of those mystical experiences when I was about 4. Um, and I then was raised in a Catholic church, and you know, the family was very strict as far as that was concerned. But growing up in the 60s, it's like sort of move away from that when you're a teenager, right? And but in my heart, I always had this. It wasn't about the church, but there was a love for what I call God,
Mm.
and that never left.
Mm.
That and it kept sort of nudging me back to, try this church, try that church, and none of them really worked for me. So it was, you know, as I was older, really just finding, oh, what's my unique connection with the divine.
Mm.
And, yeah, so that's sort of been my journey, and I feel that that's what I'm when I say I'm a spiritual mentor, um, because we all have these different connections,
Yeah.
and I think that's what the women that I do work with have, something that's calling them. So we just find their path. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. And so I'd be interested to hear how your spirituality informed your own journey, sort of like so far through your wise woman years.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I think for the last 20 years I've been, so that's probably it started a little bit before the wise woman part. Um, but I just knew there was something deeper, and um, sort of and I continue to explore, and this idea of each of us being unique people, and so there, and I'll use the name God because that's what I call it. um, but it's this knowing there's the divine in everything, and I think my path or my exploration with this is really coming to see the divine in everything, even the things that It's like, oh, no, no, no. But recognizing, oh, there's, if God is everything, the all that is, then God is in that flower, that bee, that, beetle. you know, there's a life force, and it's all part of the divine. And I think for me, that's sort of, as I've really worked with that, it opens everything else up. You and I have spoken about looks and beauty, and how at a certain point it's like, oh, but what I'm finding with that is I just get to go deeper with everything, Kathy. I'm going deeper with everything. And I feel like God is just opening doorways for me yeah, like I'm in a 20-story building, and each experience just brings me deeper and deeper. And
Yeah.
it sounds so trite, but it's like more in love with God and then more in love with life.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it sounds trite. It's very beautiful, and to me, this is what changes the whole view about aging. Uh,
Yes.
because a lot of the problems, as you were saying, with aging, and like how women get hung up maybe on their beauty or how they look,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but those are basically problems of identification, that we've
Yes.
identified with something, either with the cultural ideal to look eternally 30 or
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
or with our identity maybe in a role that we have. Now, that might be as a wife and mother, or it could be that we're more identified with a job title, like if we
Right.
have a position in an organization, and then we consider leaving that to develop our own business or for retirement.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's like, these are the things that we often have to face, like particularly in our 50s and 60s, as those changes happen
Yeah.
to our own appearance, or through menopause, or just through like the reconstruction of our families, as children leave and parents may die. There's
Yeah.
so many onslaughts to the identity that can maybe cause this feeling that you're talking about.
Right. Right. And I think that's exactly it, Kathy. Because when we identify with certain aspects of, how we've lived our lives, um, it's sometimes it feels like they're being torn away or falling away. And having a connection with the divine, just for me, helps me to know that all that, those things are just the trappings. There's so much more. I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to show up better than, you know mm, trying to impress, or trying to be more, or yeah, those things for me, it just, especially the proving, oh my gosh, how many years I spent trying to make sure I looked a certain way and did certain things, and they were just on the outside. And to have that connection and just come back to, mm, you're who I made you to be, come back to that.
Mm.
And none of it really matters.
Mm.
And that feels like that that's how I want to live the rest of my life, is just continuing to deepen that experience.
Mm. And we mentioned right at the beginning, like some of these feelings could be a subtle depression, and
Mm-hmm.
many spiritual teachers have talked about like depression actually being a doorway
Yes. Yeah.
into
Yeah.
something. So what would you say to the women who comes to you with this feeling of like nothingness, they've got past achievements, but they really aren't feeling any. I mean, maybe they're just not feeling any passion for life. They're looking for
Right.
meaning. They know there's something more. They hope there's something more.
Right. Right.
What should that woman's first step be? And
I think it's finding out um, what her connection is to something greater than herself. And again, most of the women that I've worked with have had some background in religion. And I think one of the first things that we sort of tease apart is what was that relationship with the divine to you? Because sometimes growing up in certain churches, the patriarchy, and there's just the idea that God is out there and punishing, or there are so many mm, beliefs about what God is, and we just sort of, well, what is the truth about that for you? What kind of relationship do you want to have with the all that is, that will give you a sense of peace? And uh, what I love working with some women, we will just say, what would it feel like to be delighted in by God? And just know that you are so adored. And how do we get to that place where, what if that's the truth? What if we can learn to believe in that rather than, oh, God is judging me for you know not being a perfect mother, or not doing this very well. So all that proving. And I often think this has a relationship too with um, our relationship with our fathers. So we have this God the Father, and then it gets twisted into how our relationship with our own daddy was. So I think there's just a lot of untangling that has to be
Mhm.
done so that we can get to that place of you know, such acceptance.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I know you've got a Sufi background, and I've
Yeah.
heard that there's a Sufi saying that I looked for God and I found myself. I looked
Mm.
for myself and I found
Oh,
God.
God.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. I'm getting chills.
I love that. I love that saying because
Yeah.
that basically sums it up. Whichever way
Yeah.
you enter this inquiry, whether it's from the self-searching point of view
Mhm.
or from the God search,
Right.
it
Right.
goes to the same place.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that because and being sort of mystic from the get-go,
Yeah.
it was just being able to find that God is God is in us. And the more that we I mean, I'm just hearing accept ourselves and recognize the divine in us, then we can let go of so many of the wounding and the disappointments, and just come back to that center of love and being delighted in.
Mm.
And that just, to me, that just opens so many of those doors. It's like, and you know this is how aging can be. It's so important to me to, like, my granddaughter, I want her to see that being a grandmother and aging there's a lot of joy in it, and there's wisdom, and there's delight, that, yeah, not to fear it, but sort of treasure it. So
Yeah, that that's wonderful, isn't it? That would be part of my vision for wise women collectively to be just showing a different path for
yeah,
the journey of aging and standing for something different. So, if the work that you're doing to I guess initiate is the word, initiate women to
Yeah.
um, looking at their lives differently. And it's not conceptual, is it, Kamala? It's
No.
really, it's experiential, this, what you're initiating them to, a different experience
Yes.
of themselves and their potential
You're
and the
right.
possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I keep going back to this idea of when they can let some of the old ideas go. You know, I know that part of your um, the tagline for this what wise woman's journey is new opportunities. It's like, oh, I don't have to believe that just because I'm 60 something, my whole life is over, or that I can't be funny or silly or sexy, or oh, oh, I could do this, oh, I could do that. And oh, I'm just getting it, feeling like it's a download of you know uh, joy and possibilities. It's like, let's open the doors that we can just be these amazing women. Um,
Receive
it,
that energy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. You just said something I'd just like to pick up on a little while back about, wounding, because
mm,
that's, to me, that's often the thing that we have to address in order to be able to reach into this expanded version of ourselves, and again it's identification, isn't it? When we're
yeah,
identified with our wounding or in victim consciousness and blame still,
hmm, yeah,
that that prevents our access to this more expanded way of living.
yeah, yeah. I often, because I felt like I was so wounded in my early childhood. I think of a wound, and even today, if someone says something unkind, it's like I feel like there's a part of me that closes in to protect myself.
Mm.
And if we've got all of these wounds, and where's this coming from? Owies that we're trying to protect, then not very much can flow smoothly, because there are just all of these kinks. And to be able to heal or open up so that more can flow through, and there are then more opportunities. um well, I'm going to just share this. There's a Sufi story about a Sufi woman who um, was going through a lot of pain. She was really, really hurting, and in one of her prayer times, she felt the presence of God come to her and say, "Show me where it hurts." And she was able to open up the place that really hurt. And she said that she just felt like, or wrote, I guess, that just this peace and flow came through. And she just like broke down in tears, because it was just like such love and such compassion just coming in and healing like that. And I love that story, and the idea of show me where it hurts, and the tenderness and love that can come in and just open us up. I love that story. So
Mm. That's
um,
beautiful.
yeah, and I just think that if we can do that, allow the divine, love, it can be just love, compassion, tenderness to come into those wounded places, everything opens up, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's such a lovely, encouraging, and positive message.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Maybe we just, could you say a little bit about Sufism? I mean, I don't know how much it permeates your work. I know it's your own path, but I'm thinking
Right.
we're using this word, and there may be people who are listening to us
Oh
thinking,
yeah,
"What's
yeah,
that?"
yeah. Well, it's the mystical branch of Islam, um, and it is, it does influence my work, but primarily it's about the mystic that I love. Just a sense that we're one with God, and God is always with us.
Mm.
And it's about love and compassion. Um, when I say, that it's Islam, it's like sometimes that freaks people out a little bit. But what drew me to it, I mean, having been Catholic, and then I went through, I've studied a lot of the religions,
Mm.
but the love and connection, is what really drew me to Sufism.
Yeah.
So
And we speak of the mystical pathways, of course, they've got a lot more in common with each other than
yes,
they have with the religions that they're associated with.
exactly,
So it's like
exactly.
the esoteric pathways for anybody who's listening who's not had any exposure to them are the sort of, the teachings about the way the universe works in a way, aren't they?
Yeah,
The teachings of truth that maybe you don't find so easily in the religions. So the teachings of
right.
energy,
Yes. Yeah.
how energy works, and Sufism is, well, what people, I suppose, what people might recognize is, you know, the, the poems of Rumi and
Rumi. And
Hafiz and
yes.
people like that are quite well known. So that
Right, right.
might be where they've encountered it.
Yeah. And that may have been, I probably didn't know of Sufism until I heard of Rumi, and I was just like, oh, more, more, more. So yeah,
Yeah, it's very, very
yeah,
beautiful teachings.
yeah.
And you have a gift, I think, to offer.
Yes, yes, I do. It's an assessment and some exercises. It's called the I Feel Fabulous assessment and practices. And that is on my website. And I'd love to share that. It's just a very simple tool, but fun to, I think it's fun to just, you know, how fabulous do I want to feel? How fabulous am I feeling, and how fabulous do I want to feel? Because that's part of a luscious life, you know.
Yeah. So it helps people to diagnose where they are and where they want to be.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just some practices, mindset types of things to just clear away some of the beliefs that we have. So
Fabulous. And tell us more, because the Luscious Life, is that a name of a program that you do?
yes,
That,
yeah,
tell us more.
yeah. Yeah, I this is fairly new. It's over the last year or so. I realized that part of this wise woman journey is about having the mindset, basically, of, you know, just really appreciating all of life. And it started out initially as I had gone to a conference probably about 5 years ago now, and there were a lot of younger women, and all of a sudden I'm realizing, I went into the hotel bathroom and looked in the mirror and thought, oh my God, I'm not young and pretty anymore. It was kind of like a shock, and I started grieving, and it's like, no, you go back to your own practices and just really experience all that's wonderful in your life. And um, the connection with the divine is a big part of it, and appreciating all that we've had. So um, even the
And
fact that, no longer being young and pretty, there's still a beauty that we have that we can lean into, and that's luscious,
yeah,
so yeah.
so important. And I think so important, for women in our age group to talk about these things because they aren't necessarily talked about very publicly. There's a
Right.
huge pressure to look younger. And
Right.
I know, I know when I pass the mirror, I sometimes think, who's that? And
Right.
this short wave of grief, comes up when when I watch a video back when I've been talking and things like that.
Right. Right.
Oh my gosh, I've forgotten I was that old.
Yeah.
In my mind, I still look 25, or
Right.
maybe a bit older than that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is a surprise sometimes
It
when
is.
mirror,
It
because
is.
again, you're always faced with that, the physical being compared with the eternal being, if we want to call it
Yes.
that, because inside, that
I
what looks out of
it's
the eyes,
yeah,
doesn't age.
right.
Not the same
Right.
way. Gets
I know it really is a shock to, oh my gosh, I'm 66, and I don't I always thought 66 would be old. It's like I don't feel old. you know.
Yeah, yeah. There's all this sort of like reprogramming we've got to do of ourselves, because previous generations, 66 was considered to be old.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But it doesn't feel that way anymore. It does, and and actually we've now got, thankfully, a whole range of opportunities that may mean that life in your 60s can still be quite expansive and healthy
Mhm.
and fulfilling. There are lots of opportunities.
Right. Right. Because I intend to feel vibrant until, the day I go. I just like, because that's how I feel inside. You know? Um,
Me too.
so
Yeah, so anybody who is feeling those feelings of, slight depression or just emptiness, as though they're at the end of a phase and need to work out how to break into something new, you can go to Kamala's website, download her free gift, and read what else she has to say on that website.
that
And
would be wonderful.
I
Yeah.
know from both our conversation here that Kamala and I were not immune to those feelings ourselves,
Right.
and are with you on this journey.
Yes. Yes. The- as because each time I mentioned earlier, going deeper and deeper. Well, each of those layers, there was a depression, or there was some shock that I had to go through. But that's, you had said the depression is like a doorway, and each of those things, no, it's not an easy life, this aging for women. um but
No,
it's rich.
there's grieving and
Yeah.
along with
Yeah.
it. I mean, we have to accept that that's part of it and
Yeah.
embrace that. I've yeah, a couple of other speakers as well who are talking about grief. Uh,
Hmm.
it is it is part of it. It is
It
part,
is. It
like
is. And
the bridges that
when
we
I talk about this luscious life, well, grief has a lusciousness to it as well. So it's not all roses. Sometimes it's a sadness, but it adds to the richness and lusciousness. So
yeah. Uh,
celebrate it all, right?
I'm thinking of something that a teacher of mine once said, and it was words to the effect of the truth is that life is enough to break the heart and to break it open. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I just got chills. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Kamal. I've really enjoyed
Thank you,
the
Kathy.
conversation. I
This
hope
has been
that
great.
people listening have appreciated that dive into some of the issues, that the emotional issues that face us all, and have some hope and encouragement that there are ways through into something more expansive, and not something that's like not a situation where life is closing down. So
Right,
yes,
right.
here's to the luscious life.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you so much.
you. You're welcome.